GM. This is Rionna Morgan, your host today. I'm so happy to see everyone here joining us. So this is, as you know, the very first Vagobond Media Web3 writers without our beloved host, CD Damitio, because he's moved to Japan. So that is so exciting. But we will continue here, and he's going to set up something on the other side of the planet, another Web3 writers, so that we can be available worldwide. All right. Good morning. Good morning. I'm Rionna Morgan, and I'm going to pass the mic to Odd Writings to introduce himself. And I see Indefatigable is with us, and I see Annie is with us, and I see Monique is with us. And so I'm going to send around a note, an invite to speak if you want to jump up. And just like every single time we have this podcast, this is a conversation, and we talk about writing, and we talk about writing in Web3. And so Odd Writings, welcome.
Hey, it's good to be here. I always like to hear your voice, Rionna. It's pleasant and gives me a good start to the morning. I'm here with my coffee, and even though I say morning, I'm in Austin, Texas, so it's actually 1 PM. But for me, on Tuesdays, that's morning because of my goofy, wonky schedule. And I'm especially happy to see Annie up here. She's a recent Twitter friend of mine, so it's kind of cool. I'm glad she's here. She or he or they or whatever. Anyways, so I like most people here. Well, I'm here most weeks, but for new people, and for the podcast that gets sent out later. I like to write poetry, so I'm mostly a poet. I do write some articles as well, and I have a bunch of NFTs that I've made. So that's my little summary, and I will pass the baton on to the next speaker.
I guess I'll jump in. Odd Writings. Oh my God. I just stumbled on one of your awesome, super sleek web pages, which like lists the marketplaces with your stuff. And I was like, this is a thinker who has done this work. And you had, the etymology of the word meat, which we talked about like on a previous, Vagobond, Web3 Writers Hour. So I was like, oh, it's just so cool. I can't wait to collect that. Anyway, I just thought you're doing, it's such an understatement to be like, oh, you make a few NFTs. You didn't say few, but I'm always impressed. I'm indie. I'm a dev, artist, builder, writer, poet, weirdo. And I work with PageDAO, our total grassroots, user-led, crazy decentralized organization building really cool stuff for writers and readers. And yeah, I'm putting the finishing touches on an invite system on our alpha app so that users can invite other users to test out our crazy new product. It's got a lot of cool features. We'll be adding more features based on user input. It's very unusual, I realized, to do app development from the inside out where users have the lead and not some venture capitalist. It's so weird and counterintuitive because we like expect apps to be made for us. And I realized, I was like, oh, there's a lot more communication and work that has to happen when you are the system. So like, anyway, I've been like really excited showing off the app to people like Rionna and scheduling a few more like things like that. I don't want to get too deep. It's software development and creative writing seem to be at odds with each other, but they're not so much anymore. Everybody uses ChatGPT. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. That was not funny. Anyway, I've gone on too long. Bye.
Thank you both so much. And let's go ahead and pass the mic to Ani, and then Musashi's welcomed us. And Maggie, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Hey there. Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I mean, Odd Writings already mentioned. I don't even know how we stumbled across each other. Probably about 2 weeks ago or so. So, he mentioned that in one of my tweets comments, and I was like, oh, Web3 writers, I should be there. So, yeah, I mean, a short version of how I'm related to writing. I've been writing since my teenage years. About 10 years ago, I self-published 3 books, 2 novels, and a compilation of short stories. One of those short stories was published by Paulo Coelho back in the days. 2 of those 3 books became bestsellers. So I ended up launching a podcast for writers who wanted to become authors, called Right to Be Read, and it went ahead for about 4 years with 2 episodes a week. It's still live there, but I'm not keeping it live at the moment. I'm not publishing new episodes since quite a while. Since 2017, I've been in Web3. Back then, there was a project called Publica that did an ICO. It was one of the very first Web3 based kind of publishing things. Platforms out there. I don't think there was much going on back then or after, but I was one of their first users. So eventually my first novel was kind of minted on the blockchain around 2017. I mean, when I say, published on the blockchain, I mean, like, not really, it was just a token that represented the registry of the novel. So it wasn't really kind of on chain in its classic sense. And since then, I've been in Web3 professionally, working as a marketing person. I keep writing. I have collaborated with visual artists on some of my writing pieces where I would narrate the thing, and then we would have music and visual art. And create mini digital storytelling kind of, movie pieces in there back in the days. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Amazing. Welcome. We're so glad that you're here with us. And Musashi, let's pass the mic to you. And I see Tom has joined us here in the audience. And Tom, I'm going to send an invite so you can maybe jump up and talk with us a little bit.
Hello everyone, how are we doing today? What's our topic? I missed the intro.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're actually introducing ourselves. We're going around just talking about who we are because we've got some new members in the audience today. And so that's the spot we're in. So you didn't miss anything, Musashi. So welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Okay, awesome. Hello, I'm Musashi. Good to see new faces in here. That's always fun. Also really nice because it's kind of a slow week for us. So you're like filling seats that would normally be filled. Glad to have you all out here. Cool to hear some of those stories. Interested to talk to some of you some more. A little bit about myself. I grew up in South Florida and got into writing kind of as an outlet. I was a bit of according to all my records, a person who has issues with authority. Now, I've since learned that little marking that they put, which, by the way, if you go into a really deep, government, job, they will look up your records all the way to your kindergarten class, which is where I learned of these notes, that I had a problem with authority when I was in kindergarten. Okay. I don't know how you can figure that out at that age, but I think we all have a problem with authority when we're young because it's natural. But as such, I turned to writing as a way to get out of all the crap I was dealing with in school. I didn't work well with the normal schooling system. I was booted out of public school. I was not only booted out of private schools, but blacklisted from private schools. And I wasn't even that bad of a kid. I just didn't know how to go with the flow. I was always and think for yourself, go against the grain type of person. And my parents encouraged that. So I even got in trouble for writing. I would write poetry or stories in my free time, what I considered my free time. The teachers did not. If I wasn't paying attention, apparently that wasn't allowed, even though I had already assimilated the material. And that was also eventually what pushed me out of writing for a long time, even is still a bit of a block for me today. When I was in 9th grade, my main poetry book was a big, thick notebook. It was like the notebooks that had like 5 notebooks in one. I had a ton of stories, ton of poetry in there. And basically, long story short, the dean of students, who didn't like me for reasons that I had no control over, confiscated that book and was supposed to give it back to me at the end of the year, which he never did. Turns out he burned it. And because they considered it evil. I wasn't writing anything evil, by the way. But that really put a blocker for me. I had, published a bunch of poetry online and even won the first poetry contest that I entered on poetry.com way back in the day, which offered perpetual publishing and storage, archive your poetry, which now that I'm in Web3 tech, I understand that to be quite a bit incorrect. Like their promise to store my publishings perpetually should have had a caveat little fine print that said, so long as this company is in good standing and can afford to host your documentation, and the third-party integrations that we utilize, like AWS, also have those same caveats in place, that they're in business, that they can afford to provide this service, that their centralized databases don't get corrupted for one reason or another. Now I understand things like the blockchain or Arweave, where I can guarantee that it's going to be around for at least 200 years. But I can't promise perpetual publishing unless I can actually prove that. That's a little bit about myself.
Thank you so much, Musashi, for jumping in. I even learned some new things today. That's really great. And I'm so sorry that administrator threw away your writing, burned your writing. That's heartbreaking. I'm very sorry about that. Tom, hello. Welcome to the stage.
Hi, good to I was going to say see you guys. hear from you guys again. Sorry I've been away for so long. How are you doing, Rionna?
Oh my goodness. I'm great. I'm seeing amazing things coming from your neck of the woods. You want to tell us about that? They're so
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely. Cool, thank you. Well, I just launched a Kickstarter today, which is great for a supernatural urban fantasy novel. So that's live and kicking and really cool. Later today at, I think it's 3:00 Pacific, 5 p.m. Central, I'll be doing a Twitter space with Jason and some of the guys from Book.io. And we are minting I think it's 3rd or possibly 4th novel tomorrow on Book.io, which is super, super cool. It's just always great to launch stuff with them. And then I'm panicking because everyone else is panicking about the market and freaking out and, it's the end of the world as we know it and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, it's been the end of the world so many times, you guys. Relax. It's okay. Just have some tea, do whatever you do, calm down. But it still gets to me and it makes me all anxious. So I'm ready for the for the market to calm down a little bit.
I hear you. So everybody's kind of jumped around. I've given, send out invites for Monique and Maggie, and please feel free if you feel like that you want to jump up on the stage and join us. You are more than welcome. We always just try to have a nice conversation here. And so I'm super excited, Tom. Will you add the, link to your podcast later in the chat or something, somewhere we can find it? Maybe some of us can drop by and support you there as well. That would be wonderful.
I will do my best.
Excellent. Thanks. And then I guess maybe since everyone has introduced themselves, I might introduce myself. So I am Rionna Morgan. I'm behind the Vagobond media icon today. I also work with PageDAO, and I own my own publishing company, Whitney Morgan Media. I'm a best-selling author, internationally published. My traditional works are housed with Simon & Schuster, but I've been a Web3 writer now full-time for years, 2 years. And I am the creator of the 7 Love Stories literary NFT collaboration. It's a transmedia project where I collaborated with artists, and myself as the writer wrote 7 flash fiction short stories. And so it's a beautiful project, and it's always doing amazing things out there. And so, yeah. And I'm also editor-in-chief of Vagobond magazine. And so I really try really hard. I know, Musashi, I try really hard to be in a place where I can help other writers who enter the space know where to go and know what to do and know who to befriend and who to connect with, like Odd Writings, like Tom, like Indy, like Musashi. And now, Ani, you'll have to tell me exactly how to pronounce your name so I do it correctly in the future. And so, yes, wonderful. And so I'm so glad that we are here. And I want to pass around a question really about if we are, because there are new people in our podcast today, if you were to first arrive on the scene here in Web3 as a writer, what advice would you give people who are first entering the space? And so I'll pass it around. We'll just start with Odd Writings, and we'll just go around round robin again, and then end with me, and I may be able to give a few pointers myself. Okay, so Odd Writings, you want to take it away?
Sure. I would say find as many. Well, if you have access to Twitter, get on Twitter and take part in as many spaces as you can. Try to find, like, say, if you're into poetry, find poetry specific spaces, uh, and find NFT spaces that are associated with literature of some sort. Uh, and just listen. If you want to, if you're not ready to speak yet, that's fine. But you know, just go in and listen and kind of get a feel for what's out there. Some of the other more, I guess, obvious things are doing web searches and so on. But really, social media is a good place to meet fellow authors and find out how they started, and then talk to them. Uh, be giving in what you don't try to just take information. Try to give information as well, because it's sort of a two-way street. Those are, I think, the most important things to know. And then little by little, you'll start to meet more people and figure out kind of what the landscape looks like and the different platforms. And I think that's probably the best way to start spaces of some sort. And if you don't have access to Twitter, Farcaster and some of these other places that are attempting similar things, get into them as well.
Excellent, excellent. That's great. And so, Easy, it's welcome. We're glad to see you. We've gone around and done introductions really quick, and now we are responding to the question of, if you are a new writer to Web3, if you're a new writer to the space, what would you do? What would you recommend this new writer do? Where would they go? Who would they connect with? Things like that. And so, Indy, let's pass the mic to you. And then if you want to just pass it on to Musashi and Ani and Tom, and then over to EZ, that would be great.
Cool.
I would go to PageDAO.
Easy is just reading my mind. No, PageDAO is probably one of the few places where you can find a variety of Web3 writers who have done all kinds of experiments. And I think we're still in experimental phase. Shout out to Publica, which Ani mentioned earlier. I think that the number one thing that writers are looking for, and no one talks about this, is community. And so if you have people who will read your work, who will offer feedback, in, it's kind of hard to find that near us sometimes. The world has like atomized individuals into like little nuggets of separate lives. So it's really cool that we could use the power of the internet to get together and share. So I think the work comes first in finding those communities. And then second, best practices are like also really hard. How much should I charge? Where should I mint my stuff? What's it look like? How do people get access to it? What is your marketing tools? How do you do all those questions that, in today's market, even traditional writers have to face, and so I think I would go to PageDAO definitely. And the cool thing about going to PageDAO, and this is a hardcore shill right now, is that we get to collect kind of the pain points and then figure out solutions together that we can implement together. And so we've collected quite a few pain points. There are still many, many, many more to overcome, but it's really nice being on the edge of experimentation. I think we're still there. So yeah, if you're looking for super sleek, well-formed solutions, I don't think Web3 has it necessarily. And if it does, it has limitations like who owns your content. Anyway, like Musashi was mentioning. But we can create better, and I think we're focused on that. All right, I'm passing it to Musashi.
Hey. All right. There's so many things that you could do. And I think some of the most important ones have already been mentioned. The community aspect is huge. You got to get in there and listen, read, and talk to other people, connect with them. Not all of our struggles are exactly the same, but boy, do they rhyme. And you may find that others have come in a bit earlier than you, and they've got a lot of information that they can provide, especially if you're providing some of your own information, like what brought me here. And probably one of the things that I learned when I came into Web3, doing a lot of like user testing for different platforms and dApps that were coming out, games, all sorts of stuff. At first I would get angry, upset, frustrated that the developer didn't build this or that, or they built this way and I can't believe they built it that way. Why didn't you build it this way? And what I quickly realized was that a lot of times, coders are head down. They're focusing on the thing they have to focus on right now. And they don't have the time or the bandwidth to really pull their heads up and look at things from a different perspective sometimes. Not everyone. Some are really rounded, and PageDAO has that with Indefatigable, which is really cool. But it's really not that common. And so I realized that like, those things that I wished were built or were built differently, a lot of times the developers hadn't even thought of it. And if I just brought it up rather than complained about it, if you just complain about it, you're probably going to get pushback. I did. But when I brought it up, like, hey, why was this built this way? Had you thought of this? The good communities, the good devs, they're like, hey, actually, we hadn't thought about that. It's a great idea. Let's implement it. Do you have any suggestions? And so, a big part of what we get to do with Web3, tech, with blockchain tech, is we can become owners of not just our own assets, but the actual entities that are dealing with these assets, the marketplaces, the communities and businesses built around those marketplaces that manage them, govern them. PageDAO is definitely like one of the first places I would go, because it ticks all the boxes that we're talking about here. We have a great community. We have wonderful developers that are working hand in hand, side by side, with people who have no development skills whatsoever. But we know what we like. We know what we want. We know what we don't like. We know what we don't want. And not all of us have all the solutions. And it really takes a group of people with different backgrounds, different skill sets, different experience, different knowledge to build the most robust thing that is going to tick all the boxes and make everyone happy, be as fair as possible. So get in there and don't be afraid to talk to one of the developers. They're often the most avoided people because, yeah, sometimes they're too busy. Leave them alone. But they're usually pretty good about saying that or just not responding when they don't have the time. But other than that, talk to them. A lot of communities already have railways, pathways for you to talk to the developers if it's not already direct. Most of them are just very direct. Who's talking right here in this chat? One of our main developer, our lead developer. You're talking to him, Indefatigable. Thank you, Indy, for being accessible to the people who need what you're building. And that's one of the most beautiful things. You're not only helping guide it, govern it, as a PageDAO holder, you can be putting in proposals on how everything works, how rewards get spit out, how everything gets uploaded or what kind of rights get assigned to this or that. What options should you have? And in the same regard, you're an owner of that entity. So, such a beautiful thing. Not only have we X'd out middle persons in so many different areas of our space, but we've almost, we X'd out the middleman, but we have almost just like combined that in with the business and become the middleman. There is no middleman, but we become the owner. And that's the beauty of the co-opetition that seems to be such a commonality within Web3, between community members, DAO members, other platforms. There's a lot less competition, needing to crush your opponent to succeed. When in actuality, taking out all those middlemen has allowed us to realize that there was so much being taken in the middle that both sides can be winners. I first learned that in testing out the Aave platform. That first let me realize, like, hey, it's all about liquidity here on who's earning what. And there are extra rewards here when there's no liquidity. And so there were so many rewards because the middleman was gone that I was, when Aave launched on a new chain, they're still doing it every time here's a little bit of alpha if you want to make a little bit of money. Every time Aave launches on a new platform, just like any other protocol, they have no liquidity. They need liquidity so that the thing works, and they reward liquidity providers. And so every time they launch on a new platform, I go jump in and I put collateral on there because I not only earn passive income, but oftentimes, actually 100% of the time so far, when they first launch on a platform, there are so many rewards that I can get paid to take out a loan. Do you hear that? I don't think anyone's ever experienced that outside of Web3 because it's never been possible. But I have been paid to take out loans. I have to say that again. I got paid. I did not. The rewards were so great that they were paying my interest for the borrowing of the assets, whether it was Bitcoin or USDC or whatever, cashing it out and paying for my food. I was literally paying for my food for offering up some collateral and taking out loans and then going and playing with that and earning more off of farming on Curve and different things like that. But that was the first like big brain explosion for me, was there are actually enough rewards that the borrower, the lender and the borrower can both earn money? How is that even possible? And I realized it's very simple. It's just, hey, there's liquidity. We need liquidity, and here's the rewards. as the liquidity comes, the rewards go down. It's simple as that.
Kaboom.
Wow, thank you, Musashi, for sharing all of that. So we're in the middle of answering the question, if you are new to Web3, what would you recommend that others do? And I think we can pass the mic to Ani, and then Tom, and then maybe EZ.
Yeah, sure. So everyone mentioned the most important word in the space, which is community, obviously, because communities are what make or break projects for sure. That's kind of, it's it is what it is, and that's the core of everything. It's obviously communities are too many. It's going to take a bit of time for people to figure out where to look for them. There are different, chats on X for poets, for crypto writers, Discord servers, different projects, different things happening on Lens protocol as well, etc., etc. So there are tons of it. Probably they all have different vibes, so you just have to check out and see what kind of works for you. But I think one of the most important things is to find places and people who are trustworthy, who can actually give you the right information in terms of what works, what doesn't work, in terms of the technology, right? I think at the basic level, you need to understand the technology in order to know what are the possibilities that this brings, what kind of added value you're going to get from it, in order to be able to understand for yourself and your needs how to use that technology. Because very often, it's very hard to imagine it. We all get all these, buzzwords and nice phrases and nice narratives about what this space is about and what it actually brings. But it's sometimes also you need a bit of due diligence, because everyone has learned how to tell the right stories and the stories that we want to hear as writers. But very often those narratives don't really represent the truth, right? We keep, in the very beginning, if you remember, during the NFT hype cycle, for a certain period of time until OpenSea was called out, they marketed themselves and, they had in their marketing materials and website, etc., claiming that they are a decentralized marketplace, right? Or stuff like that. So I feel like, that's very important to understand who is saying what and how much does it actually, represents the actual reality. And for that, you need to understand a little bit about how the tech works and what is the difference here. The other thing that I think is important is it works in a very similar manner. As a writer, you need an audience. So the more kind of, you focus on building your own audience, the less dependency you will have on other projects, on other centralized marketplaces. You will, the more you understand the tech and the bigger really hard fan base you have, the easier it will be for you to understand how you can link those two together and eliminate all the dependencies and build something that is a direct link between you and your fan base. And also, if you've already been a writer, you probably have this audience, have a bit of readership in Web2. So once you understand how things work in here, you will also try to figure out what would be the easiest bridge to bring in your existing readers, because just by coming to Web3, you shouldn't really forget the ones that are already out there, right? So I think those are the things that one needs to figure out, and there is no kind of, one size fits all. We all have different needs. We all have different styles, different kind of, ways we engage with our fan base. And so it's like, maybe it's good to see how others are approaching this. But, we've done it, we've always done it this way, or it works for me, shouldn't really be something that you just take and duplicate. There should always be something kind of, that you need to come up with by yourself, because maybe just detaching from how everyone does things and coming up with something completely new and fresh, we're all experimenting here. So, not being afraid to experiment and just trying things that may be fun, that may be something that really kind of corresponds to your personality or, your style of communication. Those things may help, and maybe you can come up with this new thing that no one thought about and that actually works as well.
Yes, thank you, Ani. That's very, very insightful. And it's really wonderful to have um, you join us who's got such a foundation of Web3 knowledge that can share all of that information start to finish, sort of. And so we're very happy to know you and very happy to welcome you to this Web3 Writers and all of them in the future as well. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank
Tom,
you.
yes, thank you. And am I saying your name correctly, Ani?
It's Ani. Yes, that is true.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. And so, Tom, how about you and then EZ? And we've got some other people in the audience that we've seen. I'll send around some invites to them and see if they want to jump up and let us know what would you do? How would you advise someone who's just joining the Web3 writing space?
I want to second a lot of what Ani was just saying. I am not new to Web3, I don't think necessarily, but I still feel very inexperienced as a writer in Web3. So one of the things I think I would advise for new writers is something that I need to hear, something that I need to do, which is to learn and evangelize the technology to people who are not familiar with it yet. Because the audience, that's the only way to grow the overall Web3 audience, I think. When I talk about some of the projects and things that I'm involved in, I just see people's eyes glaze over and they're like, so it's a what? I'm like, it's really cool. And I just end up stuttering and not doing a good job of conveying what Web3 is all about and all of the potential that it has for them as readers and as consumers and that we have as writers and artists. So I would definitely recommend learning, as has been said today already, learn about the technology and then be able to condense it to people who aren't involved yet and be able to evangelize it so that those people will come on board with us and be able to find our stuff and find other authors and creators as well.
Oh, yes, Musashi, I see you've got your hand up. Yes, please.
Yeah, I'd like to just touch on two things that actually drive in the points of two that were spoken. Ani spoke about, decentralization. Just real quick, remember, when you're coming into Web3, decentralization is the thing. But remember this. No one in the world knows what 100% centralization or 100% decentralization looks like or even how to create it. Everything is a spectrum in between those two. Nothing is 100% decentralized or centralized. We just realized that, we went real close to one side of the spectrum, swung to the side that was heavily centralized, and we didn't like it. But it doesn't make sense for everything to be decentralized, and everything's in layers. So understand that, like what Annie was pointing out about OpenSea, maybe in what they were expressing was true, that a certain portion of that marketplace was decentralized, but what people were really meaning by decentralization was not exactly what they meant. And in that way, they really needed some other verbiage that expressed exactly what OpenSea was, because that was maybe we don't know if it was intentional or unintentional, but it was very deceptive marketing. And the other point, I believe it was Tom that was speaking on that. I actually lost my train of thought. I'll come back if it comes back.
I'll pick up where you left off, because I love, everything that's been brought up has been great, but where Tom left off of is being able as, and not even necessarily like a new person, a newish person, as anybody, but important when you come in to understand the tech, at least the basics of it, and to be able to then easily explain that to somebody so that you yourself, every time you explain it, you kind of get better, and you're like teaching yourself by getting asked these questions and stuff. And something that Ani touched on, and I'd like to go in a little further, is she was, mentioning not only, doing your research, finding trustworthy people, but she mentioned kind of like doing, following, your likes and passions. And I think that's hugely important. I think, if you're coming in as a new writer, definitely, obviously, you come to PageDAO. I can't think of any place that's more open and welcoming and we're having fun, we're educating, we're building, it's the spot to come. But alongside that, I think just going to where you have passions. If you're also a gamer or something, like look around and find some cool game community. Maybe you find, cyber brokers and you wind up working on some lore with that. You never know where you might find a connection that leads to something in literature that wasn't your main focus for going there. But that should be included. So if you're following your passions, and things kind of fall into place, you might find yourself writing for some other cool project that adds to your repertoire and expands your viewership and everything. So I think that's also important.
Thank you, Easy. And that is why Easy in Crypto is one of my favorite hosts or co-hosts. If anyone needs one, reach out to that man. But yes, I remember now. Thank you for jogging my memory. It was that one mistake that I see artists, not just writers, all types of artists, musicians, when they come from a Web 2 area to the Web 3 area, they treat them as separate spaces. And whereas this may be true, it shouldn't be treated this way, where they believe that they are expanding their marketplace to a new space and leaving their original fan base or user base behind in Web 2 and focusing now on this new user base, when what they should be doing is educating and guiding their already solid fan base right into Web3, empowering them.
Yes, I thank you so much. And Ani, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of, follow up on that. I think, in this space, many people are used to kind of, putting the technology under the spotlight and making that a hero of the story. But I feel like, we shouldn't really talk in those terms. Like, artists are artists. Like, they use NFT as a technology, but they are artists. They are writers. Writers are writers. They are not crypto writers. So I think, if you just change the way you look at it and look at the technology as a tool, as a kind of, something that you are using to enhance those experiences and, to add the benefits and the relationship with your fan base, readers are readers. It doesn't really matter whether they are like, there is no such thing as, we don't even use those terms, right? We use it for artists and for writers, but we don't even say Web3 readers or Web2 readers. It just doesn't even exist. So I think, though, if we look at it from that perspective, it will be easier for us to understand what it is about. Fiction is fiction. People are reading fiction for certain reasons and, and experiences. And just because it's on blockchain, it's only adding to those experiences and to those relationships. So I think if we look at it from that way, then we will be able to try to figure out how do we actually, just make those relationships with your existing fan base better, because this technology enables us to do that. And that's it, basically.
This is an amazing conversation. I'm having the absolute best time. And I can definitely agree with the things that are being said. The things I can definitely echo what we all are really talking about. And I really want to jump off of what Ani was saying and talk about, we don't delineate between Web 2 reader and Web 3 reader. And I just think that is something that PageDAO can absorb and take to heart and think about. And I also, it leads me to another question about why would someone, a writer or a reader, want to step their toe into Web3, even if they don't have any knowledge of the technology? Why would a writer want to publish in Web3? And I think, Indy, I'm gonna toss the mic to you for this one to start out, and then everybody else sort of jump in however you would like. But why are we doing this? And so yeah, Indy, you want to take it away?
India, I think you're having trouble with that mute button again.
I'm sorry, I was not. Rihanna, please rephrase the question. I totally got distracted. I'm admitting it. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a question that so many of us know the answer to, but it's really for listeners in the future to be able to say, this is why we're doing this. So why would someone a writer want to publish in Web3? Why would they want to do this? What benefit does it give them that they don't find elsewhere?
Okay, excellent question. I should have this categorized into like 3 memorable categories, but number 1 is anti-censorship. I know that's big for a lot of people. I worked at a publishing nonprofit for 6 years, and we talk about soft censorship as kind of what people do to themselves when they think their work isn't going to be received by an agent, by an editor, by a mag or publisher. And this soft censorship is so pervasive, it applies to how we even tell ourselves our own stories. People are afraid to write in their journals what they don't want to be seen. And so we're providing and working on tools to make truly anonymous, pseudonymous work out there. We're putting work in to help people to be able to tell the hard stories of life that don't have to be warped to fit someone's image of what the status quo will accept. That's a big deal. I've worked with writers personally from all kinds of backgrounds, from homelessness to drug addiction to incarceration, women writers who are worried about telling stories about abuse. And quite frankly, we need to protect writers' ability to tell their truth. And so, I think that's number 1. Why Web3? Because you can tell your truth. And I think that's kind of why I dedicate so much time to building these tools on blockchain rails in a decentralized way. And then the second piece is, like Musashi was saying, if at all you can have a stake in the platforms that you're working on and a voice in how the platforms are run, it cuts out the challenges of disappearing work significantly. You can vet the internals. So like, for example, PageDAO is completely open source. Not everyone is a coder, but realistically, our entire development process is documented. We give regular weekly updates to the community. So there's no mystery in how the thing works. There's no, it's just there for you. Not to mention that, and the financial transparency. So, all those are really big deals. So if I publish on, Paragraph or Mirror, I can see their internals. I can see all of their contracts. I can review that. When I publish on Medium, I get no access to the code. They can change their structure, format, whatever, and I have no say. It's like, oh, thank you for letting me know after the fact. And then I guess finally is, it's the social aspect that we talked about. And this is what I've witnessed. I grew up in Brooklyn as a little kid. I'm sorry to talk so much, and I would paint on t-shirts for money. We were really poor. I would put little, I don't know, personal illustrations. I had a 1 paint kit and I would just sell these white t-shirts with my bad art on them. But I remember the feeling every time someone would buy one off of me that it was so much bigger than just the transaction. It was that they were like, oh, I see you. And rather than just giving you a handout, I'm supporting you, your creativity, and wherever you are, I see you. And what I've found in the Web3 space, and I'm sure everyone here has felt a glimmer of that, when someone collects your work for whatever price, and it's like, I see you, this touched me, this moved me, that interaction is absent completely from the publishing world. We are so separated from the outcomes socially of what we've created. My dog just barked. I'm going to shut up there. Those are my 3 things. I don't know if they make sense.
I would add one thing if I could, real quick. For me, one of the really big benefits of doing Web3, of writing on Web3 as opposed to Web2, is perhaps well, it's the ability to defend against plagiarism. But we're not quite there yet. Here's what I mean: is if you let's say I'm a poet, right? So for me, I'm thinking more along the lines of poetry versus literature, but it could apply both ways. If I'm a poet and I first mint my poem, okay, even if it's stored off chain, there is that immutable date that's in the blockchain that says, hey, look, here's this poem, and I'm the one that wrote it, and here's a date, okay? And thereafter, if anyone were to plagiarize it, it seems to me that I should be able to point to that and say, hey, look, this actually makes it much easier for me to defend, my rights, and that's something you can't do on Web2. Now, as a poet, it's kind of a trade-off, because most of the publications want first right publication, and they say, oh, well, if you post this anywhere else where other people can see it, then we won't accept it as a magazine. So it's that limits my ability to use Web3 as a plagiarism defense. But I think in the future, if we can change the way that magazines accept poetry submissions in particular, then that would become a much more practical reason for using it. So I just wanted to add that.
And I'll jump in for a sec. I definitely applaud Indy and the Big Three, and very interesting and great point by Odd Writings as well. I'll just throw in something a little different, just general interest in technology. What's this over here? I keep hearing about these NFTs, this blockchain, this Web3. Oh, what are they doing? You can do interesting, these drops and these you can share and sell and so just even out of just a general interest in technology, if you're a writer and you have that slight interest in technology, there's probably going to be some touch point that's going to bring you over a little. And so if you come over a little and you're a writer, hopefully there's going to be enough visibility, to be able to find your way over to PageDAO and stuff. But, I think that aside from the benefits, that are incredibly important, there's also just that, people are curious and this is interesting.
Yeah. Indy, man, 100%. Point number 1 made me tear up. And I like to answer this question by not answering this question and saying, why wouldn't you use blockchain technology to publish your work? It's kind of silly not to. If you're sitting at a park bench, writing with a pencil and paper, and somebody walks up to you and says, hey, for a fraction of a penny, what we've done is we have this platinum tablet here. It's 4 foot thick, and we're gonna, diamond etch what you're writing onto that platinum tablet. And then we also built this huge vault that's impenetrable. EMF can't get through, nothing can get through. And we got this gallery of all these platinum tablets with your writing on it. And basically, like, you have the keys to give out to whoever you want and the key copier. Why wouldn't you do that?
I think there's also another aspect of permissionless, like old writing mentions kind of, magazine submissions and the requirements, like why would magazines kind of, tell you if you're good enough to even be featured there? Like, why do you have to find an agent to convince them that you are good enough to be represented and all that stuff? So getting rid of all that, I think, is the beauty of it. Like, I need to write whatever I want to write, whenever I want to write, and I want the reader to be the decision maker, whether it's good or not. If they buy my thing, then it's good. If they don't, then it's not. But I need them to decide it, not all these other people who very often kind of, don't even know things as much as they should. So I think that whole possibility of getting rid of all of them and not really even worrying about the requirements of submissions and not even needing to submit it to some kind of magazine that has to decide whether your stuff should be there or not is the beauty of it all.
Most definitely. And I can jump in and talk a little bit more about the protections of IP and the protections that Web3 offers, publishing on the blockchain offers writers who have, perhaps large bodies of work that they would like to be protected in the future, not just in mock perpetuity, like Musashi was talking about earlier, and how we're literally protecting the literature of the world in the future. And that will be something that future generations will have access to, and that it won't be a scripted, only the big five, sort of, these are the only people who are let in. Yes, Ani, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just remember the fun fact about, in the self-publishing world about 10 years ago, there were many writers who would self-publish their books, and then they themselves would upload it to pirate websites to get exposure and so it just, having that piracy thing in there is not always the worst thing that can happen to you. Sometimes it just backfires in a more positive way. And some of them were using it as quote unquote a hack to get bigger exposure and traction when they were launching their first books.
Yeah, isn't that wild? That is a wild technique as a writer trying to get more views and more readers, in larger readership. And then I have another piece that is another reason that I feel that Web3 is so, so important. And so all of the books and all of the ebooks that we buy, that all of us buy, if we have a Kindle or a Nook or some kind of e-reader, and all of everything, that entire world of literature, if those companies go out of business, if they falter, if something happens, all of that literature that's been purchased and is purchased with quotation marks around it, purchased around, if something will happen to all of that, if that business falters, like if Amazon goes under, if, and it seems like, oh, that's an impossibility. It's so huge, but there's a little caveat to me. I am a federal bankruptcy attorney in my day job. And I know that generally all big companies write in their business plan what to do if they file for bankruptcy, what to do if they go out of business. And so if you think back through time, like Sears, Roebuck and Sears and all of these great big huge companies that have gone out of business because their need or niche or whatever it is that they filled no longer exists. And all of those books, all that literature, all of that goes away. And all of the money that was spent to create this collection, it has been sent toward at least to read these things. You don't actually own them as a reader. And Amazon and other book publishing, self-publishing organizations, they can just stop listing your books, stop listing your work for any reason whatsoever. And then sometimes if you publish with them, you don't maintain the intellectual property rights to whatever it is that you have published. And so I really feel like that those of us here in Web3 and those of us at PageDAO, those of us who are trying to sort of put, tilt publishing and turn it upside down and make a new future for this, that is a massive reason to do so, is to protect the reader and all of their investment in the things that they've collected, and to protect the writer with their IP and their investment in themselves, and creating a place that is safe and secure for the world's literature. And so that's a massive reason. And it gets kind of scary to think about what could happen, what would happen, with all of these things that we've been collecting all this time. And the reason behind why Web3 can protect both the reader and the writer. And so it's a beautiful thing, I think. So yes, let's see. Does anyone else have anything? We're at the top of the hour already. Oh my gosh, this time flew by. I have like 5 other questions that I'll just wait for next week.
I just want to say hallelujah, amen, and whippy.
Yes, definitely. And, I think I want to maintain the tradition that we've had here at Web3 Writers by Vagobond Media to end this space with aloha. I think that would be lovely to think of CD every week. And so what we do traditionally is everybody who's on stage, on the count of 3, they open their mic, and then everybody just says aloha together. And CD hailed from Hawaii, and aloha means hello and goodbye. It also means love, and it also refers to the air that we breathe and that we're doing this together. And so I really feel like that's a lovely sentiment that I would like to continue. So on the count of 3, if you would like, if you're on the stage, please open your mic and we will just say aloha together, and then I will end the space. So 1, 2, 3.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha.